we have got now is going to be a sit down and a chat and a little bit of a talk behind the scenes in regards to somebody who was there at the time that these figures were being developed, even developed some of the toys that you yourself might own. And it's going to be a really interesting insight into how the process works and how you end up making toys for a living. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Mr. Andy Cousins! You won?
I think it will.
Excellent. Hello. Right. Can you see?
I can see you.
Okay, that's all right. As long as you can see my face, that's fine. Right, welcome to TF Nation, Andy. Thanks for being here. Let's start from the beginning. Just tell us a little bit about your history and who you are. Who is Andy Cousins?
Andy Cousins, right. I only had two skills in my life, and that was drawing and football. And when I was really, really young, I watched a programme on the BBC called 7 Up. I don't know if you're familiar with it. But basically what the BBC did is they took kids when they were 7 years old from a public school and private schools and public schools and then secondary schools. And what they believed, they would attract these people all the way through to in their 40s. So basically their belief was at the age of 7 years old, you would actually have shown traits of what you were going to do when you grew up. Firstly, I just love toys, as I said, and I love soldiers. I used to hand paint all those things. So in this case, in my case, that's exactly what happened. So I went to art school, design college, ended up, first job was doing interior design, just to get a job. Second job, I left there and went to Kittycraft. Kittycraft were an English company, preschool company, great products to work on, and that's where I did had my first toy produced, and that was what a buzz. You know, I can remember walking through Burley. You got it?
Is this...
I'll carry on talking. I can remember walking through Burley, because that's where Kittycraft were based, and
there we go.
I saw for the first time...
This isn't a young Andy Cousins, by the way.
That's why it's in black and white. But I saw a child with a toy I designed, and wow, what a buzz that was. It really was. So I think it's a couple, actually, yes. That's just a smiley rattle, but had faces on. But I had such a buzz from that. So then I left Kittycraft, went up to a Marketwise, and that was a company that did point-of-sale stuff. But what it did teach me, I brought in my drawing skills, and what it did teach me was the use of Magic Marker. Now, Magic Marker, of course, is hardly used today, but it really did free me up if you're a freehand drawer. And so I was doing all this sort of stuff for quite some important clients. I was there for 3 years and moved to Pfizer because they paid more. And
they pay a lot more now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So they paid more, and they used my skills again in the graphics for quite a few years at the same time. So it enabled me to buy my first house down in Folkestone. So that's the key reason. No other reason than that, really. And then I went from Pfizer. Because Pfizer, they paid London wages, but they kept you in. So I decided, no, I want to move on. And a job came up in Milton Bradley, purely as an ex-colleague of mine. Well, that's still Pfizer stuff. That's how interesting this stuff was I was doing. It was deworming for cows. So, I got a call from a guy called Richard Hurley, who used to work at Kittycraft, who's then now at Milton Bradley. And he said, Andy, there's a job for you up here if you're interested. And what's that? I thought, back into toys, brilliant. So I went to Milton Bradley and started, new colourways for Big Track, so I started doing also on toys at Milton Bradley. One of the key lines that I worked on, which really got my taste buds going, was robotics. And there we go. And that was Goon, and that's the images of the prototypes on the left. And that was a really good line, very busy line, very difficult line, because the tooling was very difficult. The products themselves were very difficult, but it really did put me into the boys' toy sector. And then, of course, it's history. Milton Bradley got bought out by Hasbro. And with Hasbro, it sucked me in as well, so it was quite a good move, really. But what they were after, of course, course, was robotics. Hasbro desperately wanted a robotics line, plus a games company. And of course, Milton Bradley was one of the oldest games company in the world. It's a games company, no, games company.
Games company.
Games company, yeah. So, so this is some of the robotics stuff I did. Robotics was a great line, but sadly, I think once the US got hold of it, they totally ruined it, in my view. They started to have us good versus evil, obviously with the experience of Transformers. They tried to apply that to robotics, and it wasn't, it was a construction set. And the worst thing they did was de-spec it. In other words, the fits of robotics were incredibly tight. And as soon as they started to change material to save a few bob, things started falling apart. And so that was a great show. And that's a track unit I designed. I've actually got a sample of that in the hall, if you want to look at it later. And I was really pleased with that. The idea of this is they worked individually, and of course, if you teamed them up and connected the motors, you could get it actually acting like a tracked vehicle, so it could do circles and all sorts of things. So it's one of my successes, it was. And then, I don't know, I have no clue who these are, but...
These might be some transforming robots. So I suppose that's a good thing. So that's basically your history and how you got into Hasbro.
Yes.
So you're working on all of these different lines. So what is your job title at this point?
I moved across from Milton Bradley. I was a designer. I went across to senior designer, and then a manager, and then a product manager, and then to group manager, and then to a category group manager, which meant I'd handle lots of groups. So I did boys' toys, girls' toys, and creative play. They were the three things I did. And Transformers was a wonderful line to work on. And it was a wonderful line working with Japanese, you know, Yogi-san, who I met, I flew over many times, and they were absolutely tremendous to work with.
So what are we looking at here then? What is this? Apart from it being a toy, but when you're designing it, what is this stage of the process?
What happened with Takara, we'd give them a brief. We'd have internal meetings, obviously, and what it was all about price points. We need something that's $9.99, $14.99, $19.99, and so on, up to the Christmas gifts thing, being probably 25 quid at the time, something like that. So we really gave them the price points, and what they did is they applied those price points to the development of each of the products. So obviously they were smaller, the entry price points were quite small, with quite simple transformations, and as you went higher up the price points, they became more complicated. And what I did, because I was managing, it was very difficult to actually, what I missed was the actual physical drawing of these things. So quite often I would sketch, after coming back from a meeting, I would sketch out a slightly different route or routine. Yeah, a different route of could they do this, or could they try this, or could they try that? And then it was all a case of whether the tooling, the timelines, etc., would take it. So it was quite a difficult balance.
And so these products, does anybody recognise the figure on screen? Stalker, yes, absolutely. Well done, thank you for reminding me.
And look at me.
So this is, this has come from your imagination.
Some of it has.
Some of it has,
yes,
yeah.
And I would always add, actually, that there's always a team. When I was in here this morning, I was looking at how many people were in here, and I was trying to think, with Hasbro Europe, with the sales team, with the engineers, with the marketing, with the photographers, with the people who designed the packaging, and then the Japanese contingent, the team would probably fill this auditorium. So that's how many there were. So I'm sitting here now showing you this. It's not all me, obviously, the bits I've done, but it's the team. The teams are very consolidated. We were a very tight team. But it always started off with our in-stock date, which was perhaps November. So we'd have to start a year in advance to hit our in-stock date. So we'd start developing the previous November. So it took that. Some of them took that long, because there's so many elements in getting a product to market.
Wait a minute. You're telling me that these toys were designed and produced in a year?
Yeah, some of them took a bit longer. You know, the bigger the toy.
You're saying longer? I'm blown away that you could churn something like this out in 12 months.
Well, our part was quite not small. Once you got the concept, once you did the visuals, once you got on board the marketing, so we had to appease European markets. So at Stockley Park, we had an auditorium. It was probably about this size, but in a horseshoe, and we present products at these price points. All they were interested, quite honestly, was price points. Can I sell it for £5? Can I sell it for £10? And so forth. So they weren't really interested in the design, the nuances of the design, whereas I was totally bought into it. You know, it was like giving birth. Sorry, probably not actually, a bit more painful, I would say. But sometimes it was more painful. But yeah, I was, as a product designer, you were so invested in something like this. Any product you design, you're invested in. And so it's very important to me, but not so important to them, that we retain some of the integrity of all these products. But it did take a year, yeah. But it's also about volume. It was all about volume.
Yeah.
We had to hit certain targets of volume. So the £5 range, we'd have to have at least a commitment for 50,000 pieces. So for the 25 quid, we did a commitment for at least 20,000 pieces. And some of the countries are very shy at coming forward with these volumes involved. So.
And if you're doing that for Europe, I'm guessing each country has its own interests in regards to what it believes it can sell.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some people are really mean. in the quantities they order, and the big boss would be there to say, guys, you've got to take more than this, or this is not going to happen. So sometimes they got ridden over saying, no, you're taking 20,000.
Yeah. So, Stoker, for example, here, you designed this toy.
Part of a team.
With the team, yes, absolutely. But are you, at this point, when you're putting these images on the page, are you also thinking about the transformation as well?
Not particularly, no.
No?
No.
Okay.
I know that at this price point there'll be so many transformations. You know, it could work. I see the finished item, I see the robot item, and they're sufficiently different. They look great. That's fine. You know, as long as it's not stupidly technical and hard to do. But no, I don't think of that. I leave Yogi-san to do that. They're far better. They're far better than I would ever be.
So basically, you come up with the robot mode. You come up with the robot mode and the alt mode, and then send it off to Yogi-san and hope that it.
No, they come back to us. They do that.
Okay.
But quite often it was too simple.
Right.
Because it's in their interest thing. Takara had to make money. We were paying them as well, so they had to make money out of this. And the more complicated we wanted it, the less money they were going to make. so it was this tug of war, you know. But we had a great relationship. We all understood what our roles were, what we needed to do.
And so when you're designing this, what sort of input are you getting from Hasbro at this point?
It's the marketing team. The marketing team at Hasbro with a lot of input, but there were quite a lot of politics involved because we had our role as R&D. The marketeers had their role. They thought they were that's what mattered. Marketing mattered. The rest. The engineers had their role, saying, well, it's no good you come in with pretty pictures because we can't make it. And then we had creative services. And we came up with an ingenious, and it's still, it was adopted by a lot of other toy companies because there was a migration over periods of time of people leaving Hasbro. And they went to other toy companies in bigger roles. And they introduced a team of 4. And what that meant was, there'd be one person in R&D, one person in creative services, one person in engineering, and a marketeer. And they all had an invested interest of getting the product to market. And it stopped quite a lot of squabbling. And it sounds petty, but one of the things I really struggled with marketing was you'd get somebody coming from Kipling Cakes. We've been working on Transformers, and they say, oh, I don't like the colour, or I don't like the subject much. And it was really very difficult because they were, in fact, they could actually put their thumb on it and quash it if they wanted to. So we had that dichotomy, that issue with the team. Not always, but as soon as we introduced Team 4, it seemed to smooth all that out because everybody had a vested interest in getting that product to market.
So moving on.
If I'm talking too much, sorry.
No, not at all. It's all fun. Anybody recognise this? Rotor Storm, yes. Any fans of ID news records? Everything comes full circle. Yes, so this was Rotor Storm. So you were the one that, part of the team, I'll get there, don't worry, helped design Rotor Storm.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what we're looking at here, then what's this sheet designed to do?
What does this, sorry?
What's this sheet designed to do from your perspective?
It's showing detail, and in fact I've got alternative designs for the cab in the hall that I drew back then, you know, so a lot of the drawings, again, do call by, I'll show you, some of the sketches, is where I tried to change, make it a little bit more interesting, let's say. Because I always felt the Roadstorm, as much as I like the product very much, I'm getting a huge amount of enthusiasm from the crowd who love Roadstorm, and I'm really blown away actually. I was quite surprised. But yeah, I just thought this cab was a bit too plain. So what I would do, because I miss the drawing so much, I'd come back, I'd see the product, and I'd come back and I'd just make some change, or try to make changes, try to make it a bit more detailed. Not overdone, because it wouldn't fit the rest of the tail end of it. So I make the change, try and make changes, but again, changes cost money, cost time, and as soon as somebody said, oh, well, you're not going to make November then, which tended to be the engineers until we got the team 4. The engineers said, oh, no, you'll blow the time schedule. If you do that, you can't do it, you know. So it was quite a difficult conversations to have. But I would draw simply to satisfy myself, because one, I needed it, I needed to draw, and secondly, and having input. Yeah. If that answers the question, so.
Yeah. Well, so this is a bit of G.I. Joe that you worked on.
No, this is Action Man.
Sorry. Action Man. Yes.
People have asked, because I was product manager of G.I. Joe, people have asked me today, well, what did you do on G.I. Joe? Very little, because it's all done in the US. The only thing I got involved with were different colour versions, where they'd had a successful product, and it's a cheap way of introducing a new product is to change the colours. So I did a lot of recolouring of these items, but that's the only you know, thing I did with G.I. Joe.
Only thing you did, yeah. So for some of the product, it's all just coming from the US or it's coming from Japan. Other stuff like this, Action Man, very much a UK-centric toy line.
Yes, it was. And what happened with Action Man, I was missing actually on the board. I was missing the drawing so much, even though I was quite senior at Hasbro at the time. I just thought, no, I'll call it a day, and I'll go freelance. So I set up a company called Design Matters, and I knew everybody in the toy industry, and a lot of people had migrated from Hasbro, even Kittycraft at the time, to other toy companies, and they adopted the Team 4 process. So I knew I'd have quite a lot of support. Once I'd left, I knew I could go back and freelance. And no sooner I left Hasbro, they got me for 3 months to work on an awful lot of micro machines. And I also did this vehicle as well as the quad bike and a few other things as well.
Yeah, so this is obviously the design. We've got what looks like a test shot up there.
Yeah, that's a model. That's a model.
Yeah.
What I've done here, I put this on specifically to show it's not just about the pretty picture. You can see this. I tried to make this a one-piece mold, and I was just demonstrating the way I've drawn it for the engineers that this is one piece. If you understand how a tool works, it's rather like emptying a bucket of sand. Having a bucket of sand and making sand castles, the bucket comes off the sand really easily. If it was a different shape, all the sand would get stuck in the bucket, and that's how tooling works.
And tooling is the most expensive part of the toy process.
It's expensive and time.
Yeah.
It's ridiculously expensive. Even putting a big block of metal that's been purified takes time. And then cutting into that metal, God help if you've got it wrong.
Yeah.
So early shots, which all people will be familiar with, first shots is very important. They get it back to us, and they wouldn't necessarily fit properly, or they wouldn't necessarily be the right colour. They literally run the colour that was in the machine at the time, save time. And from the first shots, the early shots, you could then see not only how it actually feels and looks in your hand, but you could actually see how things fitted and where things we were going to have problems. So EP1s.
Because I think a lot of toy fans, and I've certainly been guilty of this myself. We think to ourselves, well, why can't we have that toy again? Why can't we do that? But it literally does come down to multiple, because these things cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce, don't they?
Yeah.
And they are essentially just giant, huge blocks of metal.
Yes.
So they're really difficult to store as well.
But also, the bigger the metal, the bigger the machine.
Yeah.
Injection molding machine. So, I mean, it could come down to cost. So if you produce something of such a size, then it's a case of you need small, it's going to take up a big machine, which then takes up floor space in a factory, which then takes up something else not fitting in or not being able to run something else. So there's so many variations to consider.
Yeah. And so when you're doing this then, and you're designing this as one piece, budget is obviously fourth.
Yeah, I didn't have to go this far.
Yeah.
But there's a product, that's what I am. I'm a product designer who fortunately I can draw, and it's a great double-edged sword to have, because you get a lot of product designers who can't draw, and I feel for them. I genuinely do, because it's very hard to communicate something if you can't draw. It's always imagine if, but people can't imagine. So I'm very lucky to be able to draw, to get my ideas and my thoughts across.
This is...
Oh, right, so yeah, we come into Transformers, but basically one of the things, not only once the product we'd got the early shots and we knew what we were doing, it's definitely a case of working on the colourways. So I used to do massive sketches like this, and then do a colour palette down the side, colour lots of them up. We used to have internal meetings where we thought the colour was right. This we've got the pink cakes, people coming and saying, I don't like the green, or I don't like hot pink, yeah, so these are literally drawn. Oh, well, that's another Action Man. That's the same one. Oh, this is the Action Man visual. Yeah. And again, this is quite interesting because having designed these outside of Hasbro, I knew what I wanted, and I gave them about, say, 4 variations. And you literally walk in there, you hand over the ideas and the designs, and say, thanks, Andy, and you go out. I'm thinking, well, now what? I get a check through the post, but it's gone. It's gone, and that takes an awful lot getting used to. In fact, some of the products I've only just discovered, some of the micro machine stuff I did all those years ago, actually got produced. I was on eBay looking for them, and sure enough, they were there. But I had no idea. I actually bought one on eBay the other day. Yeah. But this is how I would have liked this is called Strike. There's a few, I think maybe another visual after this. No, you can. So I go back one and back another. Yeah, this is how I would like Strike to look. But again, I bought this product along. Again, another eBay item I bought because I never saw it. Yes, as the 4 I produced, they probably produced the worst one. But it's not my, and again, as I say, you're actually joined at the hip with some of these things. It depends how long you've taken, how long you've lamented, how many sketches you've done, how you've seen it. Have you waited for them to think, oh, I'll just change that, I'll just do that. And yeah, it's come out all right, it's not that bad, but it's not what I would have chosen.
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Is you've come up with the inception. It's literally come, maybe not necessarily fully formed in your mind, but through iteration and things like that, you've designed it to how you think it is. But then this 2D image has to become a physical object, and it has to pass through so many hands to get there.
Yes.
That it's ultimately never going to.
No, and that's why I always draw in 3D. I tend to draw in 3D or visuals, but also the benefit of doing in 3D, because I have the knowledge of the production process, the injection molding process, I try and draw something that I know that can be made. Whereas, of course, if you don't have that experience, you can end up sketching, come up with a great idea, and you're going to get that continued line from the engine. Well, you can't do that. And it was like that. It's nice, you can't make that.
So this was another one that worked.
That's right. This is the quad bike. Yeah. And again, there's a 12-inch Action Man, but it's very important when you're designing anything, to get basic GA drawing, so general assembly drawing. So you start off with your Action Man, you sit on a bit of cardboard, you start taking dimensions, and then you know how he fits onto a seat, which is the first thing, and then of course the rest come. But yeah. So that's the Strike vehicle on the right, which I showed you before, and you can see how it's morphed. It's changed since then. And the one on the left, the Jeep, it's left to you? Yeah, it is. Yeah, the Jeep was an existing product, which this is an example of how you don't want to do a whole new body shape, because it costs a fortune. So it's updating something, updating just a different look. So what we did, or what you can do, is take off all the peripheral things that fit onto the main chassis. So you've got the gun, on the top one you've got the gun, you've got the roll of camouflage, you've got, I can't remember what that is, some sort of gun and the rope stuff at the front. So all those would come off, So you've still got that huge tooling, which we don't have to reinvest in again. And so I did a whole number of different variations on those particular items, components that fit on the chassis, and then coloured in such a way. So it's a great cost-saving exercise, but also it's a great refresh.
And this is what that looks like in packaging. This is what eventually would have hit shelves.
If you come if you come and see where I'm sitting in the hall, you'll see my original version of this, because I actually had a two-man. What I did, the gun this guy's at is often on the floor. It's meticulous. Somehow it's just mounted on a mudguard, which I'd have never done. But I had a little a telescopic stand account with the gun, which enabled, rather like the little pushchairs you get with the kid stands in the back, and there's one child in the front, one in the back. Well, I had action man sitting on it, and then this gun attachment at the back, where another action man could stand. And I thought it was a much better use. But I imagine it must have been a cost exercise. They decided, no, we can't have this gizmo transforming at the back and another action man, so they changed it to this. But I think the version I did was far better.
Now, you talked just a second ago about micro machines.
Yeah.
Here are some of the micro machines.
Yeah, again, once I left Hasbro, I got a call, and can you come in for 3 months? And that meant blocking off some holiday time, which I was going to take. And I just sat at Hasbro, frazzling my brain, drawing as many concepts as I could. They literally said 3 months. We want you to come with play sets and all sorts of things. So these aren't the roughs, these are just the simple sketches, more finished into sort of semi-visuals of how things could work. So I really liked the submarine, and they didn't go for it. But hence the Transformer experience coming into these things. There's a slight overlap, as you can see. But I really enjoyed it, because they're nice little play sets, and they're not that complicated.
Yeah.
To some.
Now, this is one of the play sets that did come out.
Yeah, and I didn't know that actually about 2 months ago. Because I did this visual, I was given the theme, this top, I can't remember what it's called, it's toxic something like that. And I don't remember half the Transformers, what they're called, because it's another product to me, you know. Well, there we go.
Chemical cleanup.
Oh, chemical cleanup, there you go, yeah. So that's the finished item. But the visual was, I did lots of scans and sketches, came up with visual, they liked it, and hence it was there. But I didn't know until I searched on eBay, there it is, I'll buy that. So I got a sample.
There's just a look at it.
Again, sorry, Dave. On these, where I am, I've got sketchbooks which show lots of, not this one, funny enough, I've got the visual on there, but lots of different sketches of lots of different routes that I took to get to different types of playsets. Operation.
I was going to say, this is a one everybody probably recognises, yeah, but this is a very special kind of operation.
Kind of operation.
I'm just realised what I've said there, yeah.
Yeah, what it is, they had a whole line of games to go. So they wanted, why you do Operation as games to go? Because you'd be shaking them in the back.
I was wondering that myself, yeah.
It's double jeopardy, isn't it?
Extreme Operation.
But what I've tried to do there is showing you the exploded view, is that once again, it's developing something, but making sure the thing can be made. It's in layers, showing you exactly how it's done. But it was the tweezers picking out little discs, which didn't actually come out totally. You dropped them down a hole, purely so that they weren't lost.
So we've got that.
Play-Doh, one of my favourite products, great product. So the product on the left is how much you can get out of a Play-Doh tub. So what I tried to do is to, extrusions Play-Doh is everything. If the product doesn't have extrusion, other than just a basic Play-Doh tub, then Fun Factory, just come to me, Fun Factory was the biggest Play-Doh seller, and probably still is. But the idea of the item on the top left was to have a tub full of fun. So you had something to operate. You know, you take the lid off, and that becomes the gameplay, as it were. So again, this is another case of Andy. How many ideas can you knock out for our Play-Doh tub? Yeah.
And so, what kind of design time have you got on things like this?
Sometimes it's a day.
Wow.
Not this is a bit longer, but
yeah.
they're pretty mean once I've left.
Right.
Especially all the people that just report into me. It's almost like a crack in the whip, you know. Andy, we need this, get on with it, you know.
Well, like freelancing charges cost more, that's
Oh yes. Oh yes. Yeah.
So.
Oh, this is interesting. Well, the top, I think, was Spin Pop. They were lollipops for Batman and Star Wars, Ben 10. I did quite a lot. This was great for me because this was again getting into other lines that I would never have normally worked on. I weren't able to because they weren't Hasbro items.
Yeah.
So I not for Ben 10. Actually, it's upside down. I just noticed. For Ben 10, that was great to work on. It's simply again, as many ideas as you can. All Secret Service stuff, you know. And, the dodgy glasses, so you can see behind you. That's the one. Even when it's upside down, it still works. Yeah, this is a
Star Wars.
Yeah, it's like battling tops. So again, I had a brief. You don't see the sketches here. You're just seeing my rendition, my finished sort of a visual of how it would work. So they smashed into each other and then pop up. So the idea, the head pushed down, and then you, in a sort of game scenario, arena scenario, and you fire these things in, and it's basically whether you hit them hard enough or hit them in the right spot, the head would pop up, and you'd stay in the ring, and others would go. But this is a theme in Star Wars.
Then
this is a great product to work on. This is doing some work for the enemy, and this is Mattel. And yeah, this was developing a driver for Hot Wheels. So obviously he wasn't going to fit in the car that size. But I think they were going to do an animation, or they were going to they don't always give you the complete brief, other than we need a character. Some of you will recognise, and they're point to. Yeah, this guy up there. So he's already developed, but he used more to put on there as a sort of the mood I was trying to capture. So I think there were four guys, maybe three, but different looks. But keeping it a caricature that they're going to own. But that was the brief on this one. So you notice that he's got a back wheel on his back, and I had them all carrying a steering wheel, because racing drivers just get out with their steering wheel, and I thought it was a great little accessory. Very collectible, but I don't think it. Well, before I know, I've looked on eBay. I don't know whether it came up. Got on eBay.
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Is don't get too attached, because
you can't help it. You really can't help it. And I think if you're not too attached, you're not going to do a good job.
Yeah.
And I think, it's being attached and having the umbilical cord broken when it goes, and that's quite tough.
Yeah.
Not if they're paying you good money though. Buy it.
So that's just a sample of some of the work that you've done. As you said, you've got more stuff at your table.
Yes.
We're going to take some questions. If anybody's got any questions about Transformers and things, we're just going to get a microphone. But before we do that, when we were getting ready to do this panel, you told me a story about how Transformers nearly got you in trouble. I like this story, so I want to.
I've had lots of products get me in trouble. Because I used to travel to all the toy fairs, so European as well as the States. And as you know, you don't know, but you have a very good educated guess that the prototypes are worth a flipping fortune. So we'd get normally 3 prototypes made. So this particular Transformer, we had three samples made, all hand cast, hand painted, what have you. And because I used to go to all the toy fairs, I make sure I take one so they could use it during the toy fair for prospective buyers. And then I'd make sure I wrap it back in bubble wrap, put it away in a briefcase and go to the next toy fair. And believe it or not, I was delivering back a toy fair for the American toy fair at the Javits Centre. I can remember getting to JFK, and they let me through the passport, and then 4 burly security and stroke police came out, hands on pistols, said, "Would you mind coming with me, sir?" Which time I was going to be like that, I said, "Yeah, okay." And they took me to this, like a big old, bigger than this. Well, actually, no, it's probably about the same size as this. And so they took me downstairs and stuck me right in the middle. It's a big empty floor, and in came some dogs, and the guys then had the pistols out. They said, "Would you mind opening the case?" So I had no idea what this would be. I had no idea. And I opened it up, and inside was Shockwave, not in his robot form. And I looked at it and thought, oh God. And I seriously, you like to see on the films, can I just put my hand in my pocket, you know? And I had my Hasbro Europe business card. And so I'm here for the toy fair, and I'm returning a sample. And I did see a smile break out in their faces. The dogs weren't too impressed, but...
It's the fact that they brought the dogs as well.
Yeah, it was, I'll never forget it, because it was quite spooky.
Yeah.
Quite worrying time.
Well, much
Quite worrying time.
Yeah.
I also got, I've been arrested all over the world. I also got arrested in France. That was on robotics, and I commissioned this 6-foot robot to be made out of robotics with a pressure mat. So for the toy fair, the Paris Toy Fair, as the people got close to it and stepped on this mat, this whole thing would just move and speak, and you know. And so I decided I've got to transport this robot, and I thought, well, I need a case for it. I might as well have a coffin. You know, why not? So I had this coffin, this black coffin made, and laid him in it. It looked fantastic, and it was a brilliant model. You know, didn't nail it down, but I think we taped it down. And usually with my trips, I used to get clearance well before I even arrived, clearance of my number plate, so forth. And this hadn't arrived, so I got there. I had to drive across. I think there were some boats then. But I had to drive across, and of course I was stopped at customs. So what have you got in the box? I looked at him and I realised nothing had happened. You know, I said, you're not going to believe this. So I opened this great big robot in there, and I got stuck there for about 4 hours until proper clearance came through.
The toy business is a dangerous game.
Can I just mention one other one, which is very funny? I did quite a lot of work on tweenies, right, and I had to go to Home Hill. This is in Bournemouth Studios, and I was developing Milo's spaceship, and I needed to record his voice on a DAT chip. So it could be sent it off to Far East, and it would be, and little did I know it was Milo's birthday, and he'd come off the set. His head was massive. I mean, seriously, they used to put great big handles on the side and lift his head. The head was, I'm trying to, you know, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous, about the size of 3 basketballs. So this guy was sweating like hell, and I noticed he had about 4 empty cans around him. Just put the liquid back, I mean, but it was his birthday. Could I get him to speak properly? No, I couldn't. So I sat trying to talk to a pissed Milo. And I realised I just had to go back or the next day later. It was funny. I wish I'd have got his voice on the DAT tape. I'd worth a fortune.
Yeah. Right, do we have any questions?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, we've... Still there? We're running with a microphone.
Sounds like an interrogator.
Hi, I was wondering if the choice for the motivators not to be able to combine, was that purely a cost-saving measure?
Yes. Now, one of the things I meant to say here is you're going to know so much more about Transformers than I do. I was trying to explain this to people. We had hundreds of lines to produce, to get out on time, to ship, to photography, to instructions, to boxes, to, you know, I mean, masses. And it really was, you'd be better asking a marketing person. But I'm not trying to dodge the question. It's just that it wasn't in our, we had a brief, we did the brief, we got it shipped and done, and we moved on to the next product. So I really wish I could. I do apologise, but I might be able to answer something that I know in a minute.
Well, just on the back of that question, one of the other sets that I think would have come out around the time that you were overseeing it here in the UK was we got a set of what's classed as Generation 2 Constructicons, the yellow ones, but they were individually released but lacked all of the additional parts that would be used to make the big robot. Right. And what I've always wondered is, would that have been, because you say cost-saving measure,
yeah.
Would that most likely have been because all of the pieces to make the bigger robot would have been on a different mould, and therefore not running that mould and just running the individual robot? Is that where the cost saving most likely would have come from?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I'm not sure, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, and also, all the ones that were combined were always, again for me, it looks like they're going to fall apart. So I would almost certainly believe that would be a reason. But I know it's not answering the question particularly well, but honestly, I just can't, 30 odd years ago, I can't remember.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a lady down here at the front.
Was there a Transformer robot you got given a brief for that you were just dreading?
I'm sorry.
Was there a Transformer robot you dreaded being given the brief for because it looked really hard? Or were they all?
No, there wasn't. I can't honestly say it's not. The only time I'd be very disappointed with Transformers was when the Americans started to de-spec it and it became so much younger, which was a big plus for us really, because it meant they were going to dump it and we could pick it up. It was awful seeing the stuff that was coming through back in the 1991 even, and we knew then that even the colour palettes they were using and the simple transformations and the hollow, the tooling was so much cheaper. One of our first briefs when we took it up in Europe was to Yoki-san, was to make sure that it had that integrity as in the weight. The transformation, you could feel the transformation. We kept saying to Yoki-san, we want to hear the click. And it became a term that they knew exactly what we meant. We want to hear that deliberate. It's almost like Rubik's Cube. We want to hear that click, and we want to see that deliberate transformation. And they picked up, I think, certainly with Stalker and Rotor and Flash, they did that. I think it took a big step up once we got hold of it. I'd like to think so.
Yeah, because obviously around that time, while you're getting ready to design all of these, in America they're doing things like Action Masters.
Yes.
Where they're just thinking to themselves, right, they don't need to transform.
No, that's right. They're just cashing in while they can, and then,
Yeah. And is that, do you think that's because, I mean, we know that the line was reaching the end of its life in America. Is that just because, they had given up on the idea because it wasn't as lucrative anymore, and therefore just moving on to the next thing?
I do. Well, I think Hasbro US, I mean, they were really well known for we call it burning product. And again, when you're a product designer, it's terribly difficult to accept. When you see the success it's had, and again, that's probably me, but I don't have that marketing head necessarily, but in some terms I do understand, I do get it. They think, well, we'll just ring it out a little bit more to get a little bit more money before we come with something else. One of the things that did happen, again, not necessarily Transformers, but it all became about line extensions. When you had a successful line and it's doing incredibly well, we used to brief inventors. We had a lot of inventors coming to see us with wild ideas, something great, something, no way that's going to happen. But to come up with a new idea that you're going to try and market something totally new, meant a huge amount of backing. And even to a retail, if you put it on a shelf, it's going to knock something else off the shelf. So what we used to do, we had a sort of a key, probably 20 names on an inventor sheet, which we used to get in and literally tell them what we were looking for and in what line. So it really preempted quite a lot, and it saved an awful lot of time, saved us an awful lot of money, and it made the inventors very wealthy.
Any other questions? Yeah, there's a hand over there.
Hi Andy. The senior drawings is amazing, by the way, it's really cool stuff. My question is about kind of modern tech now. We've got 3D printers.
Yeah.
Have you started delving into that from a product designer, toy designer?
I've retired. No, but generally, I still draw. And funny enough, in lockdown, I picked up the pencil again and started to draw, and I was really engaged again. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, it's changed hugely. It's hugely. I mean, I'm laughing with the guys that come to see me on the stand, and I'm saying the reason all my sketches are A4 is because we used to fax everything. We had meetings with Takara at some godly early morning, and we'd fax it across before the meeting started. And Yoki-san and his team would get it running, and we could chat about it. This amazing thing in the centre of the table. It was voodoo. But yeah, I think it's changed. Well, it will change an awful lot. Yeah, and of course, 3D printing will go stratospheric. people make their own Transformers.
I think we've already started seeing that as well.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Especially spares. I think it's ideal, as long as you call it out. You know, if you're repairing a Transformer now, that people do 3D printing, it's great, provided they call it out and say this is not the original. But I think you can actually tell. You can tell.
I have a question. This is one of the super nerd questions. Okay?
You
I'm
reckon?
going to turn around and say, no. But I'm going to ask it anyway. The motivators that were brought up beforehand, they originally were part of the Takara series. They came out in Japan for a series over there. When they were brought out over here, because they were all sort of construction vehicles, one was a drill, things like that, crane. They were originally Decepticons. You turned them into Autobots and you gave them very specific colours. Those colours match incredibly well with Thunderbirds.
Right, yeah. I hadn't thought about that.
Okay, fair enough. No, that's fine. Just always wondered whether or not it was, because obviously in the early 90s there was a big sort of resurgence of Thunderbirds, and I just wondered if that's where the inspiration came from.
No idea.
No.
But also, the Constructicons, I was amazed they did those vehicles. Well, because Transformers at the time was fairly new to us, you know. When did the Constructicons come out? 85, 6?
Well, the original Constructicons toy would have been, in Japan, would have probably been early 80s,
Right.
81, something like that.
Yeah. So it's quite strange having construction vehicles. You know, it just doesn't fit with me, but of course, once I saw them, and once, they work well, but it's not a theme that immediately comes to mind that I've grabbed at the time.
Okay. Got time for one more question. Yeah, we've got a hand over there at the back.
Andy,
Hi.
I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but I'll ask it anyway. There was a lot of, around the sort of end of G1 in the 90s, a lot of Transformer toys from Japan that were released only in the UK or maybe Australia that weren't released in the US. Do you have any sort of hand in that?
No, I didn't. I mean, we had loads of stuff sent to us all the time, even when we were developing figure concepts. And one of the key things for the European markets was to send us product from their markets, because if we were developing something, it was very important. It was quite difficult because you didn't want something to influence what you were designing, but at the same time there was no point designing something that was out there already. Sorry, I forgot your question, of course.
Did you have any involvement in bringing some of the Japanese?
No, I didn't. But we definitely had loads of samples. And you've all been fantastic. I mean, in that room, this is my first time anything like this. And I've always been, not really reluctant to come, it's never been my thing. But the enthusiasm, there's like a vortex in that room, the enthusiasm is fantastic. And the people are, asking questions like that. But we were lucky, we used to get, yes, I was going to that room and just saw all the robots, all those robots, and it's just brought back.
Love it.
Fantastic stuff, fantastic. It reminded me of, again, being at Hasbro in the early stages. But some of the Japanese robots are quite stunning, but I don't think they're really Transformers. Like, it's made purely style, and probably colour palette. But I still think they're great products.
Right, okay, a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.